Facing the sea, spring flowers bloom. Common reading 3. Our view of happiness. Author, Treeman. Poet Heise. In the poem Facing the Sea, Spring Blossoms. It shows others' view of happiness. Chapter 3 and 4 of Poetry. The poet divides strangers into two categories. The great man of Chapter 3. Their view of happiness is to show directions. The fourth chapter of the common man. It's those of us. Our ordinary people's view of happiness is that a bright future will be possible. In Chapter 3, the poet mentioned the name. Where does our name come from? The Father named. What kind of people can name the mountains and rivers? A God, a great man, and a national leader. Unfortunately, the author is only a poet. A poor poet. Initially, the author did not add from tomorrow. Did not rent mountains and rivers as their own happiness. He thought, but he knew he couldn't. Even from tomorrow on, he can't be done. If the poet does it, why did he rename the mountains and rivers? Because the original name makes the author feel cold. The cold of the motherland in rivers and mountains. The cold eyes of the motherland compatriots, poverty. Warm name. A person will feel happy, also will feel warm. In line with the title of the Spring Flowers artistic conception. Strangers here, who do you think it is? The great man, the ordinary man of Chapter 4. He's not the same person as him. The poet divides strangers into two categories. The third chapter of the poem is about the great men. And people who want to be great men. The great man who guides the country is not able. It takes great feats to go down in the history books. Most of us are ordinary people. Great men's view of happiness is mostly the parents to give us the view of happiness. Better to be a great man. Really can't be a small leader, a small boss, and so on. Heise grew up in the Anking countryside. There are all rolling mountains and rivers. When he was a child, Heise played the game of fishing and fighting on this land. In these games, Heise led his playmates up to the lower river. He was the head of their group of children. Cultivate Heise's striving for self-improvement and self-confidence. Heise later appeared many times in his poems, or was infatuated with the word king. That kind of mind of the world of the king, of the domineering and tolerant mentality. It has a relationship of cause and effect with the spiritual temperament he formed in this period. Chapter 4 of the poem writes about ordinary people. Ordinary people's view of happiness is a happy marriage. A lover eventually becomes a dependent. Go well with your career. A bright future is the material and emotional satisfaction. The fourth chapter of the poem has 3 wishes and one only wish. It shows that the poet does not want the happiness of ordinary people. The poet finally reiterated that he said, I only want to face the sea, and the spring flowers bloom. Here is the only wish. And the above 3 wishes. It shows the author's firm attitude. This is the same from tomorrow in poetry. Heise, from yesterday or today. He doesn't want to be the mass of us. Don't want to be a normal person. He don't want to be a great man, either. He just wants to pursue the farewell freedom of facing the sea, the spring flowers. The pursuit of lonely freedom. May you be happy on earth. What is it, and relative to the earthly world? The nether world, paradise, are all synonymous with death. Because the author doesn't want to, or by not achieving happiness in the earthly world, then the happy place is only to go to heaven. Less than 2 months after writing the poem, the author committed suicide. So Facing the Sea, Spring Flowers House, is the final choice of the poet home. It is the visual depiction of the ideal life. It is a symbol of the poet's spiritual home. The true tour should have no fixed abode. And the author starts out with a house. In fact, a house means having to settle down. We can understand it as a grave. So we ordinary people's view of happiness is the author's grave. Facing the Sea, The warm spring grave.